to DevelopLex. Weston and I are sitting here in a creek. It's a great creek.
Undisclosed creek or disclosed?
We're in Town Branch Creek,
Nice.
the founding creek of Lexington. That we're over here by the Distillery District, and partially in celebration of the Town Branch Park opening up. Partially, we're going to give you an update about Lexington real estate market. We're going to have some interesting topics that are curiosities, that are some fun facts, and then we're going to circle back to the history of how Lexington was founded here.
One, my commitment to this show, I'm going to maybe put it on the story. I'm just getting hounded by mosquitoes right now. Right before we started, I looked at my hands and I was like, something is wrong. So if anybody ever questions my commitment, that just look at my hands right now. I would love for you to emphasize what are I feel like now we're, 4 years in, or 4, 3, whatever it is, a few seasons in. What would, when you describe what is like the foundation of DevelopLex, what are you guys doing today? How do you say it?
Yeah, so DevelopLex is all about community development, economic development, and real estate development. You saw in a lot of our early seasons, we focused on real estate development, but real estate development only exists if there's a community to serve. And that community to serve is what are some of the intangibles. It's the social fabric. It's the things that make Lexington a lovely place. But then it's also the economic value that we're trying to increase by talking about real estate development, by talking about community development. We believe that Kentucky can be greater, that Lexington can be greater, and the region can be greater for the economy, and that more economies will look at us, the better that we can stitch things together, because we have all the ingredients to be a stellar economy, one that punches out of our weight class. And part of our hope of DevelopLex is to be able to have those conversations, because if you're not having those conversations, you're certainly not going to be growing in the way that we want, and providing that vision of what's possible to people that may not have been gifted that vision or may not have had that exposure to what's possible, and to give people a target to shoot their arrow at.
Yeah. I feel like I've had more and more conversations recently and having to maybe explain the mission a little bit more, not because being asked per se, but what is DevelopLex? Because I feel like when we first started out, we talked so much to developers and real estate investors exclusively, and through live events, through just general happenings in Lexington, I feel like we've kind of evolved so much. The built environment is still such a foundational part of what we do, but I do feel like it's morphed so much into just different pillars. Obviously, this past season we had Capilouto and Barnhart, and we just hosted an event for the Town Branch at the Manchester, and we've started doing some things with Commerce Lex, and hopefully we have some things coming down the pipe with UK, and I feel like it's taken on a lot more than we're just talking to Central Kentucky real estate developers and investors.
Well, and it's cool to see that there are those big players, but it's also really important to think about those community activists that you're like, what would your title be? Well, I don't know. And some of those are the best conversations we've had, because they do run campaigns, they do organize parades, they do all the things that make it rich to live in a city, that Main and Rose would not be as valuable as a real estate play if it wasn't on a place where you can go walk to a farmer's market, a social thing that may not be something a real estate developer thinks about. But when you think about historically, developers have been the catalyst to say, I have this space, let's build up the built environment, but also let's program it. And I think that's something that's interesting about the Town Branch Park, is that you can build the best park in America, but if you don't program it correctly, then it's not going to be its highest and best use. And that's one of the really exciting things that we see with Town Branch Park and the Conservancy, is that ongoing nurturing of the environment and the social fabric is going to really create that magical space.
Why are we sitting here?
So Town Branch Creek was where Lexington was founded. And what's really interesting is that Lexington is one of the largest cities that wasn't founded on a navigable waterway. You're going to overhear some trains in the background, and that's part of why Lexington developed, but it isn't really the main reason. You look at Cincinnati, Louisville, Chattanooga, you have these navigable waterways where you could get things up and down when cartage on a ship was important to the economy. Then when rail progressed, your cities like Indianapolis developed because there was a great rail center. Same with Atlanta. Atlanta's city was named Terminus because it was the terminus between the Atlanta Pacific Railroad. And economies followed what those economic drivers were. So Lexington's been a bit of an anomaly because we're sitting here. This is a couple feet deep in our deepest spots, but wasn't anything that you could get maybe even a canoe up. And Lexington relied on Town Branch Creek as their water source, as where all their runoff went. Back when downtown had the commons where you would have your livestock up by Gratz Park, and all of that manure would flow downhill to where Vine Street is now, where the encapsulated Town Branch Creek is in that culvert. And when you had manure runoff and you had a water source, and you also kind of wanted to rinse things off, and it was all that one creek, that became an issue, became a public health issue. That was part of the reason why between flooding and containment that we encapsulated Town Branch Creek. And so what would run pretty much the same footprint of the Town Branch Trail, there's a culvert underneath it. And the Distillery District was able to pull water out of this through a filtration system, stored in their water tower, and then created into bourbon. The encapsulation happened around the turn of the 19th and 20th century. And Lexington was founded in 1775. So we had quite a bit of time where Town Branch was flowing, and now this is one of the parts where you can peer over the Goodfellas balcony and get to see close to where we're sitting right now.
SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate is a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky. Affiliated with the SVN International Network, SVN has over 200 offices across the globe. The SVN Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN helps their clients with commercial property sales, leasing, investments, and property management. Let SVN help you with your commercial real estate needs. Check us out at svnstone.com.
Yeah, it's been such the progression, not to get too far from the subject, but the progression of where we're sitting currently, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the background right now, but the progression of the district in which we're sitting currently, I think, is just so exciting. Obviously, we just did our event with DLP. This has just become an extension of downtown. The natural waterway that we have directly next to the Distillery District, which obviously has so much going on. We're starting to see a shift in the west side of Lexington with the Commons. They just had one of their first openings the other day that we were able to cover. There's just so much going on in this part of Lexington, and I feel like this is just a vital feature of that.
Yeah, it's a really cool part that what people don't know is that this was neglected up until 90s or so, where the Distillery District is. That's when it started changing hands with a little bit of a vision, all led by the private sector. But part of what was able to make the Distillery District change from a gravel parking lot to what it is now was a tax increment financing. And so when you look at this space that's up next to us, there's Manchester, formerly an industrial corridor, now becoming an entertainment district. You take that real estate x-ray vision and you see a lot more. You see public investment because there was a vision to create a trail. You see the public investment or the cooperation of an industrial revenue bond that created the Manchester Hotel. You see the tax increment financing that took the net new taxes and created value so that somebody could pave the the parking lot here. And you start seeing a lot of things that if somebody has the vision, we have to start figuring out what the mechanics are to make it possible. And I hope that other cities start looking at us, because we've looked at other cities and we find creative ways to say, wow, Cleveland does this, Boise does that, Charlotte did this, and we can say we want to make a way to stitch the central business district of downtown, the entertainment district of the Commons, and the Distillery District, and create one cool pocket of a heartbeat for Lexington. So my hope is that as you travel, this is my call to action again for you. When you travel, ask questions. Ask the folks that you meet with how things were developed, and bring back those stories, because there's a lot of really cool financing mechanics, public cooperation, things that grew other cities. And I hope that we can take that and grow a long-term branch similar to the way that Lexington originally grew.
To that point, me and my wife were in Charleston last week, and I do find myself every time I go to a new city. I mean, we had this conversation recently at a thing we were at, but every time I go to a new city, I think it's a little bit of the Lexington pride. I always think, how can we take this thing and I never go to that city and think, man, I just want to move my whole life here, for the most part. I don't end up in Charleston and think, I want to move to Charleston. I think, what are these qualities of Charleston that I really would love to bring back to Lexington? How can we Lexington this? How can we create, I don't want to necessarily recreate King Street, but how can we make one district like that has retailers?
If you're listening on
I thought I was dead.
on Apple Podcast or Spotify, a great old piece of algae just
I thought it was a little something different than algae, if we're being honest. You never know with this creek. But anyway, I go to other cities, and I think, how could we Lexington this concept? How could we Lexington this idea and make it really our own? I don't necessarily want to recreate a King Street in Lexington, but how could we make something that is most similar in our tone?
Mm-hmm. Well, and Charleston, South Carolina is a really cool southern town to study, because they have that really rich historic fabric that shouldn't be disturbed. But they've also been able to modernize so much. And that's been interesting, of the preservation of historic facades, but the modernization of the interiors. Mayor Riley was mayor for almost 30 years in Charleston, South Carolina. And he was a firm believer that you should save corner lots and be able to make sure that those didn't get turned into a parking lot. Or I think he fought for this corner lot that really led to a revitalization of an entire district. Now you have a mayor that's a developer of Charleston, South Carolina, that believes that housing is a priority, and is starting the conversation of, what if we need a referendum for some sort of contribution of, say, sales tax or property tax, whatever, some sort of additional tax base, so that we can keep our employees that work in Charleston, that are part of the payroll, living in Charleston. He's pushing for density in ways that Charleston, South Carolina is pretty bound by water. Unless you go over to Mount Pleasant, you can't. And they're saying, wow, what if we dredge to make the port an economic center? What do you do with that sand? Well, you turn that into precast. Well, what do you do with that precast? You turn that into resilient infrastructure, because coastal states are rewarded for that after a natural disaster. So it's a really cool way to see how Charleston as an ecosystem has just blossomed.
I thought something that was really cool about that town, we stayed in Mount Pleasant. I thought the connectivity between the districts, or I guess technically different cities, between Sullivan's Island, Mount Pleasant, Charleston, any of the areas surrounding, I loved the ability to be in Mount Pleasant, be where we were at, and be to Sullivan's Island in 6 minutes, and be to literally parked downtown Charleston in 9 minutes. I thought that was I felt like they kind of had figured out the public transit public transportation and just public roadways there. All right, general life updates.
So, as you all know, I've been working in Atlanta for a group that does mixed income housing, came up with that model of being able to pair tax credits with market rate. We do master plan districts, corporate campuses. We take massive things like an old GM assembly plant, turn it into movie studios, retail center, master plan that. We take an old Home Depot, assemble it with other land through RFPs, turn that into a new central business district for a group or for a city in Texas. I am looking forward to coming back to Lexington full time and getting to help grow the ecosystem here. So what that looks like, I'm unclear about right now, but excited for, and would love to help you with your projects, whatever you don't like doing. Give me a call. We'd love to bring some of that experience we've been able to gain from other metropolitans to Lexington and make something truly extravagant with Lexington. We have so much potential that if we figure out ways to do more participation between banks, that'll be able to create larger projects. We have so many development shops in Lexington that are great on their own, but what if we made joint ventures together with them to do large master planned projects? There's a lot of potential that I'm looking forward to helping with, and hope I can help you with it.
Boggess for mayor. Let's go.
That will come at some point.
That's awesome. I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't mention that you are going to be a full-time resident of Lexington again. People may have not known. We just record and release every 2 Thursdays. They don't know what you're doing between the 2 Thursdays.
In between those 2 Thursdays, I'll often fly to Dallas or Baton Rouge and work with the mayor's offices there to create cities that they want to show off to their entire state and have really become showcases for what's possible. Or I'll be driving down to Atlanta at 2 a.m. to get there by 8 a.m. on Tuesday mornings, and then I get to come home by midnight and get to spend the weekends Friday through Monday in Lexington.
We're sitting here 5 p.m. on a Monday night, and I was asking Ross what he was doing tonight, and he was like, driving to Atlanta. I'm going to be there tonight. Crazy. Well, that's exciting. We're excited to welcome you back. All right, we've got a few topics today. We've obviously already hit on a few. Most of these are conversational in nature, born out of something that somebody's talked to us recently, or analyzing some of our previous episodes and maybe wanting to get into it. There's one thing I want to mention. We're working on somewhat of a partnership with UK. We're working on some sort of partnership with UK in some ways, and hopefully going to be doing some cool projects with them in the very near future. A theme of last season, I feel like in several episodes, obviously interviewing Capilouto and Barnhart was part of that, is just UK in the center, and George Ward, UK in the center of economic development, real estate development in Lexington. I think something that's really interesting, every day driving to 270 South Limestone, my office, I pass so much. This is the most cranes we've ever had in Lexington. That might not be a true fact. At least since 1996 when I was born, this is the most cranes that I have seen in Lexington. There is so much going on the University of Kentucky campus.
So let's digest that for a bit. Some of the cranes that you see around town are at the Jif plant on Winchester Road, where they have a tower crane. They are adding some capacity, from what I understand, to it. And having tight sites, you can't always have a crawler that has a crawler is a crane, a large crane that's based on the ground and then draws a hypotenuse between your rise and run for your picks. A tower crane has a smaller footprint and is better for tight sites. So as we're going up, not out, you're going to see a lot more of these tower cranes because our laydown area is smaller. We have more site constraints for it. And going to UK, what you see is College of Agriculture is moving closer to the Commonwealth Stadium parking lots and expanding their classrooms there so that UK Healthcare can move there. I want to flash back a little bit. That area where Commonwealth Stadium is, where Good Barn is, actually was a working farm at one point, and College of Ag keeps moving out towards that. UK Healthcare is expanding their service area across Limestone, and that's what you see where State Street used to be, where you'd have people getting sent to the hospital from burning couches, will now be the hospital. So that's really exciting. And then you also have a health sciences building that is at University and Hewlett that has a tower crane. And so a lot of exciting things, as well as the tower crane that's at the Vine across from City Center. Again, another tight site that requires high picks that you can't just put a large crawler down and be able to load in and out. So really exciting things. There's a saying in development that the amount of cranes that you have is a sign of the economy that you're in. So the more cranes, the better the economy. And that's interesting to see UK be able to do that.
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmanContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity.
Shit, I'm just such an ideas guy. I never necessarily execute them. I've had Griffey takes. We need Griff to come on here and just give us takes once a month. New idea, crane watch.
That's the thing.
We should just talk in Lexington. Well, it's our IP for the city of Lexington now. I just claimed it. I think I'm allowed to just claim. I think if I just say it's mine.
Ideas are worthless unless you do it.
Cranewatch.com is now going to be ours. Crane Watch Lexington is going to be ours, and we are going to start posting info on all the cranes. I don't know that we're actually going to buy that domain. Nobody take it. Between now and when the episode releases, we need to get somebody on cranewatchlexington.com.
Cool.
Is that fair?
Do it.
Is it fair to say that this is a little bit, I think that's something that's interesting. This will get into another topic that we have, but population growth, where we're at population growth wise, I do feel like for the amount of population growth that we have, which is according to census data, not necessarily busting at the seams, we do have a lot of projects going on. Now, part of that is several of the cranes are at our University of Kentucky, which does have a freshman class every year that is fairly substantially larger than the previous.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of our population. Part of that is we do want nice amenities in the demographics and income levels and all of the things that we have, and there is some pent-up demand for that. There are a lot of projects going on right now, but let's talk a little bit
There
about
always
that.
should be. There always should be projects because buildings get older, buildings atrophy, and they're going to be worth the bricks and sticks are going to be worth less as time goes on. So if we're not constantly rebuilding to recycle what the new is, then we're going to be falling behind. There's no such thing as a city that just maintains and can still advance, maintains their buildings and their building stock and advances. So the population has been interesting to watch. We're at about 322,000 citizens right now in Lexington, according to the 2020 census data. And census only happens every 10 years, but there's a community survey that happens every 5 years that the Census Bureau intakes. And then there's estimations, and there's a lot of things that can measure year by year. We have shown growth. We broke the 200 to 300 range sometime between 2010 to 2020, and we showed steady growth up to 2020. We're about to have that community survey in 2025, which is a smaller sampling, so you're not going to get a census knocker on your door if you don't fill out a form. But we showed negative population trends in 2020 And then we also showed that again in 2021 to 2022. And why that's important is that there is a trend that people are less likely to have roommates. And as you maintain how many residences you have, how many dwelling units you have, people's tolerance of roommates then dictates a city's population. So if you and I would have been roommates up until you got married, and then I would have backfilled that with somebody else, that would have been expected 10, 15 years ago. Now there's a lot of economic strength that Lexingtonians have. So I've never had a roommate. I've had Airbnb people live with me, but since buying my house, haven't had a roommate. And so that is actually taking a bedroom out of the stock. That's not taking a dwelling unit out of the stock, but that's taking a potential Lexingtonian out of our population. And I think that's where you're seeing is that as we have maintained how many residences we have in Lexington, but the economic or social tolerances have not made it so that you have to have roommates, we've actually lost a lot of that 20 to, or the post-college to marriage crowd that would have otherwise lived together. And so that's interesting. The whole drive till you qualify is a thing that people want to buy houses. They had abilities to buy houses earlier on than they would have. And so they bought in counties that they could drive to and qualify for. And so as we see our population potentially decline, it only went down by 0.5%. That is going to reflect in our tax roll of some sorts. We're seeing it right now where expenses are outpacing Fayette County Public Schools and caused about, I think it was a 3% deviation or forecasted deviation from what their budget would have been. 3% is decent in a private sector. That's very tolerable. That's harder when governments have to really hit it by like down to the dollar.
Yeah.
Our tax roll has now shifted so that we get a lot of our tax roll for Lexington Fayette Urban County government from our payroll withholdings. And that's what's funding our general fund for Lexington, because property tax is split up between your cooperative extension, your library, soil and water conservation, Fayette County Public Schools, and I think the state might get it or the city might get the rest. And so there's a lot of ways to create tax roll, and we're going to have to start leaning on jobs, because if we maintain our property tax but want to increase the value that a Lexington Fayette Urban County government division can offer us, you're going to have to find it somewhere.
And that, not to beat a dead horse, we've talked about this several times. We obviously hosted a session at the regional summit through CommerceLex last year, and you can listen to that on our feed, where we did interview some site selectors. And that is part of the reason that people start, because nobody's thinking like, man, Lexington is really on the downhill like we are. But because of the cost, because of a lot of the factors you just mentioned, there are more people that aren't living in Lexington that may be using the amenities of Lexington, that may be a part of our workforce, all of the things, but not choosing to be in Lexington. Now, they do use the public roadways, they do use our amenities, they do shop at our new developments, all of those things. But when you look at the actual population and the tax basis of Lexington, that is not necessarily going up.
Yeah, so I do love Lexington, but it's important for us to see that the sprawl costs cities dollars. If you are thinking about the cost of the sewerability of something, the city really has to figure out what was the best place to expand to and choose that. Because you have to think about a $320,000 house that sits on 3/4 of an acre, that has one poop pipe that runs 200 lineal feet till the next one, and you have to think about the cost of that. You have to think about the cost of the firefighters that have to respond in a certain period of time. You have to think about the trash collection that needs to have efficiency in it. And that's what Lexington's thinking about. Most of our major roads are state. It's Man o' War, Winchester Road, Richmond Road, even Main Street is a state street. So that's not hurting Lexington's value or tax, but there's importance to the Lexington MPO when we think about transportation. There's also importance of thinking, how can we develop Lexington in a way that's efficient for Lexington's tax roll? And then how can we create great jobs that Scott Countyans want to drive to Lexington for, that then help pay Scott County to be able to maintain and build a new judicial court, that be able to expand their sewer capacity, to be able to do X, Y, Z. And it makes sense to follow these natural nodes that we have. Lexington's is going to be founded from Town Branch out. And for other reasons, Richmond developed where their town center was and such. So we have to be encouraging of everybody that's in our economy. The economy doesn't care about a county line. And we have to be less stuck up about Lexington has our county line and be thinking about how can we create great jobs and great livelihoods for all the people in central Kentucky, because Lexington alone won't be able to do that forever. And we can't do that alone right now.
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex and Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting topic. I think that...
What's your thoughts?
I mean, I feel the sentiment of being an excited Lexingtonian. I feel very excited for the progress of our city.
We have a salad named after this city.
We have and that's in different cities. It's not just a Lexington salad. You can go to Chattanooga and get a Lexingtonian, right? I assume
you can
get a Lexingtonian. Yeah. That would have aged not well if it was a Chattanoogian. I feel very encouraged by the state of our city. I really do. I think that there are a lot of people that are having really positive conversations about the way that we grow. I think the absence of conversation would be the detriment to a city like ours. I think there are a lot of cities that have failed.
Or the absence of bad conversations. I want to hear the people that say, I'm restless in Lexington. Lexington needs more.
Correct.
If we don't have that, then we are stuck. Then that's a bad, bad place to be. Because there are some cities like that.
Conversation versus agreeance. I think conversation is good. Just agreeance is a bad tone for a city to have. We've done this. We're doing this way because we've always done this way. That is a bad mantra to carry. And I do feel like Lexington in a lot of ways is positive in that way. Right now, I feel like there are a lot of good conversations happening. So I feel encouraged. I know more and more people, the older I've gotten, that are, would consider themselves Lexingtonians that really may live 15 minutes from the border, that are using our amenities, that I do work by, that I do run into.
I don't like the word of using our amenities, because it doesn't cost a city for them to use the park, but it adds life to Jacobson Park when you see somebody flying a kite there on kite day and there's a mass of people. I don't care if they're from Richmond or from Lexington. That added value to Lexington. I think there are some things that do cost a city. If you bring crime to Lexington, that costs the city. But for the most part, it's positives that when people come to Lexington and shop here. They're using our amenities to go to the summit, but the summit is quite happy that they're there. The tax increment financing district is able to be supported and to show that Crown Jewel could be built on a farm on the outskirts of a town. I don't think that there's many uses that are impeding on a Lexingtonian's use or making it age worse.
Sure. For distinguishment, that's not what I meant.
Okay, whatever.
It's not the Weston versus Ross show today, I promise. We're just in a creek. Our tensions are high. It's all the things. Yes. Our amenities are here to serve Central Kentucky. That's why you've seen, at one point, I believe a director at CBL told me, at one point, this could be wrong. They may have just been tooting my word. At one point, Fayette Mall was I believe it was third highest grossing sales per square foot mall in the country.
Yeah, because they put out Turfland and Lexington Mall out of business.
And that is because we had so many people that were making a day of coming to Fayette Mall, spending the whole day at Fayette Mall or thereabouts, and then going home and saying, man, I really enjoyed that day in Lexington. There was a rainy day. We went to Lexington. We went to the movie theater. We shopped for a while. We had great restaurants that we may not have in our towns, and we went back. That is supporting Lexington's economy. That is using our amenities in a positive way.
You're right. So what do you think about the typical Lexingtonian story? Because not everybody is born at Central Baptist and went to school here, had a high school that they can say at their next picnic what high school to go to and say Lafayette.
Yeah.
What do you think is turning into the Lexingtonian story?
My hope is that more and more people find us through a Reddit thread, find us through a college search, find us through a place that's great to raise a family, just by a quick Google search or by word of mouth of a friend that moved there for a job. They had to move to Lexington. They didn't know anything about it, and they were like, gosh, that was great. Some of our good friends now that we met through a thing at our church, they moved here from Orlando, Florida. They truly, her brother had moved here, and I don't even know the exact reason they moved here, but they couldn't have known less people when they moved here outside of her brother, who at the time lived in Winchester. They have absolutely loved their experience here. It was by happenstance that they made it here because they literally had no idea what Lexington was before a year and a half ago. I hope that that's more people's story. I think truly a lot of people did grow up here, have lived here. I don't like that story though. I am part of that story. My family's not from here. I have no third generation last name that's in Lexington, so I never thought I would stay. But I went to UK. I considered myself almost like rediscovering Lexington when I went to UK, got plugged in at SVN, ended up staying, ended up seeing a completely new city, and now I consider myself hopefully a lifetime Lexingtonian, unless Abby changes our plans down the road. But I hope that that's more of our story, is that they come here for some other reason than just because they were born here and they have to be here.
So let's talk community development, economic development in that. I think that we need to have more entry-level jobs, and we need to make sure that we don't lose people to Nashville, Chicago, Cincinnati, Louisville, Atlanta, Knoxville, Chattanooga, and because they're getting $5,000 more in a city that's going to cost them $15,000 more. We have got to make sure we articulate that when we're offering these University of Kentucky graduates jobs right out of school, and hope that they believe us and trust us when we say that. We have such a superpower in Lexington to be able to have Transylvania, BCTC, and University of Kentucky bring us thousands of people to fall in love with Lexington, only then to lose them over a job offer that they might have not gotten, because we don't have that many jobs available to take 10,000 new people in the month of May every single year. But what if we did? And I hope that as we're thinking about economic development, we think about who can that be that gives our young people an opportunity, that has a corporate framework built out that can take that. And how can we become the IBM that everybody could get a job with, that Lexmark had jobs for engineers and was just great. Like how can we create those again and make people want to stay, allow people to stay, start a family, and say, yep, I'm not going to move because I believe that Fayette County Public Schools is one of the best public schools in the country.
The right partner can make or break your development project. That's why Bowman's integrated services, from landscape architecture to planning and engineering, are trusted by the region's top developers. With deep roots in Lexington and the backing of a national network, Bowman has helped shape some of Central Kentucky's most iconic projects. They know the land, the process, and what it takes to get things built. Ready to move forward with confidence? Call William Hodges, Regional Leader, at 859-309-6501. Bowman, where vision meets precision. Learn more at bowman.com.
We had a conversation pre-podcast that I thought was a good. Our conversation looked as though, there is this stigma of you go to UK, maybe you're from somewhere that's not UK, you go to UK to have the college experience, then you move to a bigger city, you move that bigger and better is the thought pattern. I'm actually okay with that. Doesn't really matter if I'm okay with it, it's happening. But I'm okay with it in the sense of the conversation that we had earlier of, I think that it's great for people to go out, live in Lexington for a stop, move somewhere else for a stop, really gain experience. I mean, you're a great example of this. Gain experience in a different market, be able to bring a different perspective to our market, and then come back here. I hope the thought is, I want to come back to Lexington because my family is in Letcher County, but I don't necessarily want to live in Letcher County. I want to raise my family. I want to be able to live by a great park system. I want all of the things that Lexington has to offer, and I really want to commit to living here for a long time and bring a different perspective than somebody that has been here their whole life.
Which is the community value. You go to these cities like Atlanta, and it's a very transient city. You have people that are going to use that to be their 3-year hop, and then they're back somewhere else where they get moved to another corporate center. And Lexington has that consistency that really creates value that I don't know that we recognize, that you're going to have somebody that you recognize at a happy hour today that is probably going to be in your proximity in another situation 5 years from now. And you could potentially meet, instead of you go to one in Atlanta, that guy's been moved to Charlotte, the other guy's been moved to San Francisco. And so that consistency that we've got to make sure we're using all of the advantages we have now that we have Gigabit City. That was a big deal when that first came to Lexington. We owe a great thanks to the mayor's office that put that together and the staff that led that. That is incredible to be on the front side of that. Everybody owes Scott Shapiro a thank you for that.
Yeah.
And that's been able to, we can now take a Wharton School Online class instead of having to drive up to UPenn. We have got to take that knowledge from the internet. This sounds crazy to be saying in 2025, and make Lexington better because we can.
Yep. I think something that you touched on there, it's interesting, incredibly, and we'll transition a little bit to brokerage and kind of what's going on in CRE today and talking about the built environment. Something that's interesting about Lexington, I go to a lot of different conferences and I do some work in different markets that aren't Lexington. And so I get to talk to people that are operating in their environments. And I think that's something that's so interesting about Lexington is we have become a lot more welcoming, especially in brokerage and development, with people that aren't from here. It's not as much a good old boy town as it was. The quality that has remained, though, is it is a lifetime market in the sense of you are working alongside people in a lot of different real estate capacities that you may be doing deals with them today at age 28, 30, whatever, and also be doing similar transactions of a different size and in a different environment 35 years from now. It's definitely not a market that people jump in and out of, which I think is an incredible asset. I think it means that your reputation and the way that you protect your reputation and uphold your reputation by doing things right, that's a pretty cool quality that we have. It's not as many people just jumping in and out, because I think the barrier to entry is a little higher in this, not necessarily in the market, but it makes things a little bit higher stakes if you decided to act unjust in the way that you do develop a part of Lexington, or that you actually conduct your brokerage business. That gets me to, and this is probably our final topic, just based off time, just talking about the state of real estate and CRE in general right now.
What's your take on that?
Generally speaking, I would say that we have a couple different things at odds right now in CRE. I work specifically on retail assets, but I'm obviously conscious of what's happening in different parts of the market. There is very little vacancy in many asset types. I mean, this isn't anything super surprising, but hopefully I give a little bit of knowledge to somebody. There is such a mismatch of construction costs and financing right now.
And I'd like to say the elevated construction cost plus the financing. I really hate to ever call something a bad interest rate, because we aren't in a Carter administration.
We're still historically great right now.
Correct. We are decent, but you then have to add that with the rents collected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we're in a point right now that there's a little bit of whiplash, and I'm very curious. We talked about this on the Dallas Rose episode a little bit, and I've thought about it since, where it's so much of a mismatch right now, especially for the people that got into the industry like myself within the last 10 years. I was so used to 3% rates, which is crazy. If I told Steve Pulliam from my office that, he would freak out, because his lifetime did not look like 3%. But we do have so much of a whiplash. I will say the general sentiment currently is that whiplash is adjusting, that people are actually doing deals. People are doing construction projects because they have to. There is so much capital that's been sitting on the sideline for the last few years, and we just saw this from the BlackRock report. Like, there's a lot of liquidity, and people are actually starting to deploy liquidity into CRE, whereas the last 2 years, it just wasn't the case. There was a lot of people that were waiting, and I think that they finally realized, like, waiting is not necessarily the best strategy for return. So we have seen, and you can read their most recent earnings report and just their general sentiment, or have AI summarize it for you. We have seen that there is actually liquidity going back into the market, and a lot of CRE brokerages are now. There's a little bit of caveat to this, especially tertiary and secondary markets. Those markets are doing really well. Primary market, or larger markets, still having some trouble, because there's a lot more factors that affect primary markets than somewhere like Lexington. But secondary and tertiary markets are going really well right now.
Well, my hope, as we talk about what our call to action is, knowing what the things that we can't change are, knowing that we can't change how the Federal Reserve is going to adjust anything.
You can fire Papa Powell. Just kidding.
Can you?
I think Trump's trying to, right?
It's about how we frame the story. And if that's something that you're meeting with people that are outside of Atlanta, that are potential equity investors, potential private debt, potential stakeholders in our community, I want to make sure that we have the proper messaging to be able to talk about how, no matter the volatility of the interest rates, it's not going to be a worry that people are going to become unemployed at the same rate as they would be in San Francisco or St. Louis. That's economic strength that's not going to show up on your rent roll in a immediate way, that you're like, oh yeah, this is my trailing 12. This is my 5-year forecast. That's a part of messaging, is to be able to say, even when there is a recession, we are more resilient than most other markets. And so that de-risks their investment. We have got to make sure that we're communicating that is one of our strengths, because as other cities accelerate and we remain steady, those cities will also fall just as fast as they accelerated, and we're going to still remain steady. So if you ever are meeting with people and you want to get briefed on how we message to folks that are outside of Kentucky, Wes and I would love to meet with you, brief you of how we believe that economic development can happen in Lexington, and how economic involvement, it's not just development. We want others to be involved with our economy, because that's how we grow. And Weston's doing so many deals outside of Lexington, out of state, and as he's becoming the guy that everybody looks to for retail real estate, messaging coming from somebody that is a Lexington patriot, or however you want to talk about it, is a really cool thing. It was like, hey, where's that guy from Lexington? And that adds just a little bit of value to our economy, even knowing that there's a superstar based here doing deals in Nashville, doing deals elsewhere. So we're thankful that you listen to us.
What's next? What's coming down the pipe?
What's next in Lexington?
Or for DevelopLex? That was a hard.
Or for DevelopLex. You're going to see more things from DevelopLex that will deputize you in a way that you can do more with what you are passionate about. If that's getting a short-term rental approved, we're going to have guides that say this is how you can take a house that you bought before you got married, and when you have two houses with your spouse, turn this one into a short-term rental. We're going to take that guide and say, this is how you can furnish it. This is how you should properly manage it so you represent Lexington in a strong way to a tourist. This is how you're going to apply for a conditional use permit if you're in a non-compliant zone that was residential but you want to do short-term rental. You're going to see more things about how we can grow as a city through our email subscriptions. And you're going to see podcasts that we have conversations that we hope open up the eyes. And we hope, just like we don't want everybody to be in agreement, we hope that some of them get under your skin. We hope that you disagree with them, and we hope that you have conversation about that in the comments so that others can grow and become more knowledgeable about how do we advance Lexington. I don't want to use the term grow. Grow is misunderstood in Lexington. We have to advance Lexington. What do you think?
What's coming down the pipe?
Yeah.
Just nothing but excitement. I'm most excited for, I think I've hit on it, but I'm just excited for, we're hosting the State of Downtown, or at least leading some sessions at the State of Downtown, September 23rd, I believe.
Check the Downtown Lexington Partnership website for information about tickets to that.
We've so enjoyed getting to have more partnerships with organizations in Lexington, and I think that if we can just continue to have this conversation of advancement, because we all want to live in a city that we love, I think that that's going to lead to more and more conversation about different facets of the city that we're in. And so I look forward to more partnered events, more partnered content, us being able to give a little bit of higher quality content through our channels and what we put out. I think that that's really a target of ours. And I'm just excited to talk to more people through the podcast that are just making an impact on the city. It's so fun. We're however many years in, 3 or 4 years in. And I think having more, not as much discovery conversation, but more procured, natural conversation about what's going on in the city. What are you seeing in different markets? Just conversation, I think will continue to push Lexington forward. And I'm excited for us to just have a platform to do that through DevelopLex.
Terrific. Well, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening in from Town Branch Creek, and we'll see you soon.